morning again, Your Honor. John McCarthy for Mr. Castricone. We would waive the reading of that complaint and enter the plea not guilty, please.
So look at the pretrial conference date then?
It actually is a question of bail.
Is the counsel prepared for the switch with that?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you. Your Honor, the Commonwealth will be seeking a $15,000 cash bail with a bail warning in order that the defendant stay away, have no contact with children under 16, that he engage in no computer use, and that he stay away from the North Andover High School. Thank you, Your Honor. Summarizing facts from a North Andover police report. On February 2nd, officers were working in the North Andover High School when they were approached by the principal as well as 2 assistant principals. It was in regards to an inappropriate incident that had taken place involving a member of the faculty. The principal stated that on Monday, February 7th, a female student had reported observing an older male in the female locker room. The members of the school reviewed the surveillance cameras, and it was determined that the male who was entering the female locker room was the head wrestling coach, the defendant before the court, David Castricone. The principal went on to say that through further investigation, it was determined that he had entered the female locker room multiple times over the last month. In speaking with the student, she stated that she was in the locker room on the first floor. When she entered the locker room, she saw that there was an older male inside with his hands inside of one of the lockers. The male quickly left the locker room using the opposite door. She didn't recognize him, but she described him as being a male around 50 or 60 with gray and blonde hair who had a black bag next to him on the floor. Again, in reviewing the surveillance, it was confirmed that the person in the locker room was this defendant. The tape showed that at around 4:50 in the afternoon, he entered the locker room with a dark-colored gym bag. A couple minutes later, the female student entered, and it was seen that this defendant then left the locker room. A further review of the surveillance showed that this defendant entered the female locker room a minimum of 5 times. The officers initially, or the principal rather, initially spoke with this defendant. When asked if he was in the locker room on February 7th, he stated that he was, and that he was in there looking for a scale used for weigh-ins. When asked if he entered the locker room any other time, he stated that he did. They asked if he ever found the scale, and he stated that he didn't. At that point, he was informed that he was being placed on administrative leave, and he was not allowed on school grounds. Further review of the surveillance again determined that he entered the female locker room a minimum of 9 times. Of the 9 times, the length of the visits would vary from 2 minutes to 7 minutes. Upon review, the surveillance showed that the defendant would walk down the hallway, look around cautiously before entering the female locker room. In a few of the occurrences, it appears that he was holding an object in his pocket in a manner to stop that object from being moved around. One of the surveillance clips shows that he was holding a small electronic device that has an LED screen. The surveillance began on January 21st, 2011, where it shows that he was entering the female locker room with a black bag. It goes on to show various dates of him going in and out of the locker room, sometimes again being seen with an electronic device with an LED screen in his hand. On one occasion, he attempted to go into the locker room, but there was a female near the area. He then paced around the hallway until the area was clear, and again he was seen entering the locker room for about 1 minute. On one of the dates, it shows a male wrestler leaving the scale outside of the female locker room, and then a female who would take that scale into the locker room. On Thursday, February 10th, detectives then spoke with members of the school. The athletic director advised them that the Monday evening before the wrestling meet, he was having a conversation with this defendant. This defendant told the athletic director that he was planning on taking a trip to Brazil. When asked if he was traveling for business or pleasure, he replied both. He stated that he was looking into opening a factory in Brazil making thong underwear. He stated that the production cost there would be lower, and the athletic director stated that he appeared euphoric while he was having this conversation. The officers were able to determine that this defendant has Verizon cell phone cell phones that are registered to him. A call into Verizon law enforcement confirmed that the type of phone that the defendant had most likely would have the capability to video record. The officers then went to the school, went to the locker room in question. The locker room is described as horseshoe-shaped. The lockers are metal. The doors have a mesh-like appearance. The doors are not solid. Based on the female witness statement, the locker room was searched. It was determined that the locker of one of the female wrestlers was located directly across from the locker that this defendant was observed at. The female student's locker is a full locker unit. It is believed that she uses that locker exclusively due to the contents that were seen inside. The majority of the other lockers in that area were empty and unsecured. The locker that the defendant was seen to have his hands inside was found empty. However, the dust had recently been disturbed inside of it. The shelf area, the height of the locker shelf would allow a full view of the majority of lockers across the opposite side of the wall, specifically the student locker in question. The holes of the locker door are large enough that a device would be able to record through them. There was a latent friction ridge impression that was recovered from the lower left-hand corner of the locker door. It appeared to be a large thumb, consistent with someone opening that locker door from underneath. The officers then went into the officials' room where members of the school officials may use. They went into one of the lockers and they did observe that there was clothing and footwear inside of that locker that was consistent with the clothing that this defendant was seen wearing on the video surveillance, specifically a white t-shirt with a logo as well as black shorts that he was seen wearing on the surveillance video. On the inside shelf of that locker, detectives retrieved a small black cloth pouch with a zipper that was partially opened. Inside was what they call a SanDisk, which is a brand of many small data media storage devices, essentially memory cards, among other things. That was retrieved and that is currently being analyzed to see what might be on that data card. On Tuesday, the defendant was advised that he was being placed on administrative leave because he entered the female locker room on 2 separate occasions. He stated that he went into the locker room to find the scale and that he made a stupid mistake. The athletic director agreed that that was odd because on that date the wrestling match had already started and the scale would not be needed. He went on to relate that there had never been a problem with the scales before. On February 11th, the officers responded to the defendant's home address to execute a search warrant upon his residence. They were met there by him as well as his daughter. They were given a copy to search the resident. Upon entering the defendant's home, he did have a cell phone in his hand that was taken into evidence, as well as 2 other cell phones that were taken. Also retrieved into evidence and currently being analyzed are a computer laptop, a desktop, an MP3 player, 20 floppy disks, an MP3 player, digital CVS camera, as well as other electronic devices. During the execution of the search warrant, the officer spoke with the defendant. He said that he would be willing to sit down and speak to them. He asked if he and his daughter could be present while they searched the upstairs residence. The officers agreed to that. They allowed him to go upstairs. They observed that he became increasingly fidgety as detectives entered the middle bedroom of that residence. He started to pace and grip the railing as the detective went to the attic of that area. The detective asked the defendant if he would like to go downstairs and sit down due to his level of nervousness, and he stated that he did. Both he and his daughter went downstairs. They sat at the kitchen counter. Officers asked the defendant if they were going to find anything in the attic because they could observe that he was extremely nervous. He looked down at the counter and he nodded his head yes. At that point, his daughter asked if he would like her to leave the room, and he said that he did. Detectives then advised him of his Miranda warnings. They asked him what might be in the attic, and he stated that he has some pornography in the attic. When asked to describe the pornography, he stated that he had pictures of girls. When asked how old the girls were, he stated that he didn't know. They asked how old he thought they were, and again he stated he didn't know. They asked if there would be anything on his phones. He stared and said no. He went on to say that he's been having a tough time because his wife had started going to Florida for the winter last year and he was all by himself. He has anxiety and has been seeing a counselor. He stated that he started going on the computer to look at porn last winter. They asked him specifically what he was doing in the female locker room at the North Andover High School. He stated again that he was checking on the scale. The officers informed them that he went into the locker room 9 times, as was depicted on the security surveillance. However, he denied that. Again, he said that he would go into the locker room to check on the power cords and to look around. When asked what he meant by looking around, he shook his head and looked down at the counter. In the attic of this defendant's residence, they confiscated 8 images of child female pornography, meeting the definition as described in Master General Laws, Chapter 272, Section 29C. 79 pages that included 129 images of child erotica, consisting of very young females in provocative poses, dressed in underwear, thongs, or bikinis. 77 pages of personal photos of females that appeared to be unaware that a photograph was being taken, and 335 pages of adult pornography. Those would be the facts relevant to the complaint. The reason for the Commonwealth's request of $15,000 is the nature and the circumstances of the charges as alleged. There is an additional investigation going on to see what, if anything, may be retrieved from the media that was taken from his home. I would suggest that this is an individual who now has everything to lose. He's lost his job. His wife is in Florida. He has ties outside of the Commonwealth in that Florida home, as well as I can tell the court that when the officers were conducting the search warrant of his home, they also found cash in his home, various denominations of cash, both in the attic and in and around the house. Based upon everything that he has to lose at this point, the investigation that is still ongoing, the possibility of additional or enhanced charges, I would ask that the court adopt the Commonwealth's recommendation, setting the cash bail at $15,000 with the conditions.
Your Honor, there's no objection on the conditions. Mr. Castricone is a lifelong resident of the North Andover area, graduated at high school in 1968, graduated UMass Amherst in 1972 with a bachelor's in economics, and obtained about 18 credits in Northeastern towards a master's degree in economics after that. The wrestling job was a part-time job. He is the proprietor of Castricone Roofing and Siding Incorporated, which has been an ongoing roofing and siding business, incorporated in 1976, has been ongoing for 35 years. That is his source of income. That averages about 10 employees a year. He's been married for over 38 years. He has a daughter, Rachel, 33 years of age, who lives contiguous to his home on Court Street. I would suggest, Your Honor, that the government's request for $15,000 is outrageous. It's excessive. This man has been represented by someone in my office since the inception of this matter last week. As my sister tells you, this case remains in its infancy. He was arrested yesterday at his place of employment at around 12:30, despite invitations by our office to voluntarily surrender and come over, but they didn't accept that invitation, so they went to his office yesterday, arrested him at 12:30, and he made bail sometime last evening with the friends waiting patiently outside the North Andover police station for him to be released. He showed up here this morning at 8 o'clock. My sister mentioned he has contacts down in Florida. Indeed, he does. He's had a successful life, working hard all his life and paying taxes. And he's got a winter home down in Vero Beach, which he and his wife and his family frequent, not often, but when time has it. Given his background, Your Honor, I would also point out that Mr. Castricone taught at Triton Regional, which I understand is located in the Byfield area of Massachusetts, and he taught there from 1973 to 86, a period of 12 years. The business began to expand. He had to give up the teaching profession, and had since, after that, since 1987, has been the wrestling coach for North Andover, and I am told that he holds the record for wins in the history of the Commonwealth. But given his background, his complete lack of flight and any inclination to do so, and to do anything other than appear in court to answer to these charges, I would suggest that the bail that the learned magistrate set last night at $5,000, 500 cash, was certainly more than enough, as has been envisioned today, to assure his appearance before this court.
500 cash. There would be one other request, and I believe it's agreed to by council. On paragraph 21, page 6 of 9, one of the female students' name was inadvertently included in that paragraph. I would just ask that that be redacted on all copies.
The conditions requested by the Commonwealth and consent amended are imposed $1,500 cash.
That's including the 500 that was posted. The right to petition another court for review.
Another 1,000? Your Honor, may we have, March 30th or April 1st, whichever better for the court's calendar for pretrial?
March 3rd. Pre-trial conference, court report.
Thank you.
On March 30th, sir, also, you also want, if you do make that bail and you're charged with a new crime, you're defendant in this case, the bail could be revoked. And you could be held without bail for 60 years.
Thank you. The conditions would be, again, no contact, stay away with children under 16, no computer use, stay away from the North Andover High